Hello and welcome back to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. Michael Andrews here, and today we continue with our weekly Artist Spotlight series. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with an exceptional talent, an amazing talent in the smooth jazz arena. He's known for his chart-topping albums and delivered multiple #1 Billboard hits. He's a versatile guitarist and producer, and he has collaborated with top artists and producers in the industry. Now, beyond his recording success, his guitar work has graced numerous TV shows and films. So let's dive into his music and career as we welcome back Blake Aaron to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. Blake, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, man. You have new music out right now. You've been touring, so we had to catch up with you and find out what's happening, man. So what is going on? You got a brand new album that's out, man, and I'm loving it already. And it's already, making waves. So what's going on? What inspired this new creation of yours?
Oh, man, thanks. I've been working on this for a while. We started, the first song that came out was Feels So Right, and I did that with Greg Manning. That was the first single from that album. And since then, just been putting together songs both on my own as a producer and then also collaborating with some great artists and kind of trying to stretch the envelope a little bit, doing some stuff that I hadn't done before on other releases. And we're really proud of this, and it's really taken off. We've already got 3 #1s on this album before even the release. We're hopefully looking for the 4th one coming in July, actually, the single.
Okay, nice. Now, a lot of folks don't know that you've done a lot of music in TV shows and films.
I have, yeah.
So talk to us about that. That's great.
Yeah. My whole career has kind of been things that I've kind of fallen into. I've always had direction as far as the fact that I wanted to be a musician, but specifically other than that, I kind of literally just bounced around from things because I loved so many different genres and things, and just been blessed and lucky throughout my whole life to have landed on a bunch of great things. One was when I got out of college, all of a sudden I happened to be picked up by a bunch of really well-known funk bands. So I did that for a while. Then I did a bunch of rock bands for a while. And then I did a video as kind of a rock artist that didn't go anywhere, but someone saw it who was a friend of a up-and-coming film and TV composer, and he needed someone to collaborate with on a cop show. And we collaborated together, and that didn't go anywhere. But then he got a show called The Ben Stiller Show. You remember Ben Stiller?
Yeah.
He had his own show there for a while. And so since we had already collaborated, he's just said, why don't you come on board? And I had not really done a lot of TV and film before that time. So that was kind of a new introduction to the industry for me. But from there, we did Ben Stiller's show. We did a show called Sunday Night Comics for Fox. And then he got the role as composer on Mad TV, which was a show that ran on Fox for 15 years. So I ended up being the guitar player for Mad TV for 15 years, but then also doing some composing for Mad TV as well.
Nice. Now, a lot of folks don't know, I should say a few folks don't know your origin. Why the guitar? My dad and brother played just a little bit of guitar, like acoustic. My dad, when we were little kids, used to play acoustic guitar to sing us to sleep. And I think my brother was my first guitar teacher when I was 7 years old, just for, a few months. But I took it up kind of seriously after that point. I tried a couple of other instruments. I actually played flute when I was a kid for a little while, and a little bit of piano here and there. But there was something about the guitar that I really wanted to come back to. And then by the time I was about 13 or 14, I decided I really wanted to concentrate on guitar and take it pretty seriously. I actually started kind of a rock and roller, doing all the rock stuff, but then I very quickly was turned on to a lot of jazz stuff. And by the time I got to college, I was studying jazz full time. Nice. And now with your influences, you mentioned Darren Rand, Greg Manning, Philip Bailey, so many others. How has those collaborations influenced your music?
Oh, I have such a huge, vast array of different influences. As well as people that I've grown up and listened to, and people that I've collaborated with. You were mentioning Darren Ron. Darren Ron was actually the first other producer and artist that I collaborated with, and it was just such a great chemistry. We had tried to work together for a long time, but our schedules just weren't permitting that.
I'll never forget the story of Groovers and Shakers, which is the first. I had one with Encantadora, but I had a real big number one with Groovers and Shakers, and that was with Darren Rod. I hadn't heard from Darren in a while. We weren't able to get our schedules going together. But then all of a sudden, it was right before July 4th, he sent me this track. And by track, I mean just kind of a backing track with no melody, just kind of drums, keyboards, and bass. But it was so cool, and I loved it. And this happens to me, but not super often, where I'm just immediately inspired and I hear a melody in my head. I remember it was right before July 4th. My family was waiting to go to the beach, and they said, come on, let's go. We're waiting in the car. And I just put on his track, and I heard it, and I've got to record this melody before I forget, because I had this melody in my head. So while they were waiting in the car, I recorded a very quick guitar track of the melody for Groovers and Shakers, and that became that number one song, Groovers and Shakers, while they were waiting in the car.
Wow. It's amazing where the creative process can take us, right there in the car or wherever, backyard or whatever the case may be, wherever your influence lies, and having the mind to say, listen, let me record this now so I don't forget it, so that's really great. We talked about TV, and I'm noticing that you are also on Smooth Jazz News for June, July edition. So they're talking about that as well. And I'm noticing a fun fact here that with you teaching privately, you taught a Olympic gold medalist as well?
I did. Well, that's how actually the record company I'm with came about. I had a guitar student by the name of Peter Vidmar, who was an Olympic gold medalist, the 1984 Olympics, and he became a motivational speaker. After a while, he said, I want to have something that I can give to the people who come to my events, just kind of as a free gift. And he said, do you have any CDs out? And at the time, all I had was this 6-song EP. And it was something that I had submitted to GRP Records at the time. And I had almost gotten a contract from it, but then it's kind of another story. That whole thing fell apart. Then he listened to it and he said, this would be great. What would it take to just kind of manufacture this and send it all out? And I thought, well, I love this, but I'm not super, super proud of it. And it became like, well, if we're going to manufacture the 6-song EP, why don't we just do a new CD? So that became, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we call upon like David Benoit, Eric Marienthal, get a bunch of really high profile players to help us out with it? And then it became, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we open a record company in order to do that? And that became Intervision Records. And then since then, after Peter Vidmar, he kind of went on to other things. Then Steve Belkin and Adam Leibowitz kind of took that over. But I was the first artist on Intervision Records. Now there's about 25 artists on Intervision Records. But Intervision Records came about because of that conversation that I had with my guitar student, Peter Vidmar. That became the album With Every Touch, which was my first actual real release. And then Intervision Records just kind of took off from there.
I have just figured out how to win some trivia.
There you go.
Right? Because, I didn't know that. And that's really unique story and a wonderful story as well. My goodness. So in the creation of your latest project, can you share behind the scenes story or interesting anecdote from that?
Sure. There's so many with Love and Rhythm. That one, I think I have probably more collaborations on Love and Rhythm than any of my other releases.
I noticed.
As much as I love, writing songs on my own, I was very successful with Fall For You, which was just a song that I did on my own and produced on my own, and that did very well. I just like opening up myself to other avenues. So on Love and Rhythm, I really wanted to stretch it out and do some other things. So I did a bunch of songs with Adam Hawley, which are great, and it just pushes me to write and be creative in different ways than I would. When we're on our own, we kind of are in our own world and we choose things creatively that we're kind of used to doing. So we kind of get in creative habits, if you will. Mm-hmm. So by collaborating, it kind of pushes those creative habits to go someplace else. With Adam, it was kind of cool that we lived close enough that instead of doing the way that most people are doing these days through the internet age, which is just kind of sending tracks back and forth,
which sometimes you have to do. Like, for example, Darren Ron lives in Colorado, so we can't get together. But Adam Hawley and I actually said, you know what? Let's just meet, lock ourselves in a room, and not leave until we have like 2 hit songs. And that's what we did. We actually did that with Dreamland, which ended up being a #1 song. That was Adam and I together. We had no idea what we were going to do. We just met in the studio and just started messing around until by the time we walked out, we had Dreamland. So that was one of the first songs that I did with Adam on this record. We also did a song called Crush and Big Bounce. Of the 3, Dreamland was probably the most successful. But then I also, like I said, collaborated with Greg Manning, and we actually did 2 very, very different songs together. Greg Manning and I did one that did very well, Feel So Right, and that became a #1 song. But he and I talked, and we both have a love for kind of the Pat Metheny, Lyle Mays sound.
Yeah.
That's not a sound that you hear too much on smooth jazz records these days. And we just thought, you know what? Let's just do a song. Let's not worry about radio. I mean, if it does well on radio, great. If it doesn't, let's just do a song for us that is just super creative and emotional and makes you feel like you're watching a movie. That's always what my goal is when I do songs. It's like, I want to have the visual aspect that you can have your own movie in your head just by listening to the audio. And that was the goal. And Greg Manning sent me this beautiful track that became the song Rise. We never actually went to radio with that one, but it's one of the songs that I'm really proud of. And it's a very different kind of song for me. And then there was one other song called Alter Ego, which really reveals some of my more rock and fusion influences. And that was actually a song that I wrote for Najee way back in the day. Najee and I were doing a lot of stuff together, doing a lot of concerts together. He came up to me and he said, I really want to put together a band that, you know, we're just doing a little bit more of the fusion stuff, because Najee loves fusion as well. He had this idea to do a band with me and Patrice Rushen and all this. Unfortunately, that never happened, but he asked me to write some songs for it. And one of them was called Alter Ego, because that was the name of the band that he wanted to have. I loved the song, and it was very, very, very fusion-oriented, almost like a Snarky Puppy kind of vibe to it. It just sat there because, unfortunately, we were, you know, with our schedules and stuff, it just never happened with the band. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to put this on my record. And I did, and I ended up getting a couple guys from the Yellow Jackets to play on it. Will Kennedy, Bob Mintzer played on it, and that's another song that's a very different song for me. I was very proud of. So Love and Rhythm is great because it's got a lot of the radio stuff that I love, but then on the other hand, it's got a lot of more experimental stuff as well.
And it's beautiful, and it's really beautiful. I've taken some time to listen to it several times, and we've talked offline. I was telling you about some of the tracks that I happen to have found repeating in my playlist. And I'm like, well, okay, this is interesting. I love it. I really love the passion behind the scenes, where it just shows that you guys are coming together, and in some cases, listen, let's not worry about radio. Let's do what we're loving to do. Let's create something here.
Yep.
And if it goes great on radio, so be it. I think that's a note for our aspiring musicians. And speaking of aspiring musicians, what advice would you give them?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I mean, first of all, don't give up. People give up way too soon. Things take a long time. I've had artists that I've produced, maybe they'll even be successful on one song and have a #1 song, and then they expect, well, that's it. I'm in. I'm done. I'm ready for the next, that big, huge concert. And it takes so much more than that. You got to keep hitting. You got to keep hitting. You got to keep hitting over and over again. I mean, my first 3 CDs, I definitely had some radio success, but not nearly the same radio success that I had on the last 3. It takes a while, and you got to hang in there. You got to keep going. You got to believe in your music. You got to reach that balance between, sure, you have to think about radio and being commercial, but at the same time, you still have to be creative. You still have to come up with something that is uniquely you. For example, like when I'm producing, the first thing I tell my production clients is, I need to make you into the best you that you can be. Not the best me. I don't want you to sound like Blake Aaron. I want you to sound like you. So my job is to make you into the best individual, unique, creative musician that you can be. So I think that it's tough. It's tough to just hang in there, not give up, and constantly be walking that line, that balance between, of course, you need to be commercially accessible, but at the same time being very creative and letting that outlet flow.
Words of wisdom from the man himself, Blake Aaron. Never give up, cave in, or quit. Keep pushing, keep pressing. I love it. I love it. That's food for thought for everyone. And no, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's life in general. That's good.
It is. It is.
So what's going on with you? What's next for you? What upcoming projects, tours? I know you're touring. I know you're coming off a tour right now, and you're feeling the effects of that. Well, what's happening right now? You mentioned July, I believe. So what's coming up? What's coming up here?
I met this great singer by the name of Erin Stevenson. I know she's going to be on your show. She and I have been doing a lot of shows together, and we started by doing this song I thought that she'd be perfect for. I think it was one of the Intervision Records NAMM jams. And it was that old song, I'd Rather Go Blind by Etta James. And we tried that on a couple of jazz festivals, and it just really, she brought the house down, and it gave me a chance to kind of go towards my rock and blues elements and all that. We've been doing it really successfully at a lot of these festivals. So that kind of just sparked the whole thing where now she's my guest, singing a couple of songs on each of my sets.
Nice.
We're looking forward to that. Let's see, we got a bunch of dates coming up here. Let me, I got it on my website here.
So what is your website? Let's just do that.
Just my name, Blake Aaron, BlakeAaron.com.
Okay.
On Facebook, it's just Blake Aaron Artist. So it's easy to find me either way. I'm also on Instagram and all that too, but those are like the main two that usually people like to find me on. So June 22nd, I'll be at the San Diego Smooth Jazz Festival. June 28th, I'll be at this beautiful club that Herb Alpert owns down in Bel Air called Vibrato. July 19th, I'll be in San Antonio, Texas, with Will Donato, actually. Then July 26th, also Will Donato and I will be in Syracuse, New York. Got a lot of stuff coming up. August, we got Mills Sea Jazz in Charlotte, North Carolina. August 22nd, I'll be in Connecticut. And actually, we're doing Catalina, and that will be with Aaron as well. Catalina Jazz Festival on October 11th. So we're looking forward to that.
You are busy. You're constantly moving, and that's that constant pressure that you're putting on so that you can just make things happen. So before we go, I want our listeners to hear your track selection. What would you like our listeners to hear from your library?
Wow. I mean, there's just so much. It's hard to pick one tune.
Right? And give us some insight on it, too. Just give us a little behind the scenes on it, who's on it, things of that nature. So whatever you want the listeners to hear, we're playing that.
Oh, sure. Well, here, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a choice. We could either play the song that just became number one, which is She's the One, or there's another song that we're releasing in July. That might be kind of a cool one to do because it's not out yet. I mean, it's not on the album, but it hasn't been released or pushed as a single. I'm kind of hoping that one really takes off as well. That one's called The Way You Sway, and that one's actually self-produced. And I wrote that on my own. That's not a collaboration, whereas She's the One was. So I'd be interested to see what the listeners think about The Way You Sway. So either one, I'll let you choose between She's the One and The Way You Sway.
Well, how about we do this? How about we get ahead and go for what's coming out in July in terms of you pushing that? We'll push it now.
Sounds great.
All right.
Perfect. Good choice.
And ladies and gentlemen, you get to hear it right here on Sacramento Smooth Jazz. Blake, again, it is absolutely a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, mine too. Thank you so much, Michael, for having me.
Thanks for listening to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. To continue listening to Smooth Jazz 24/7, follow Sac Smooth Jazz on social media and listen by going to sacsmoothjazz.fm.